Tonight we're going to tell a bedtime story, only it's the biggest one we have. It begins before books, before clocks, before cities. Picture a dark plain under a wide sky and a small circle of firelight where people lean close, listening. Every chapter of civilization starts like that, with a need to survive and a need to belong. Over the next few minutes, we'll drift through thousands of years as if they're pages turning softly in the dark. Campfires to farmland, villages to empires, oceans to engines, and finally to the glowing screens we hold like tiny hearths. Settle your shoulders, breathe slowly, and let's begin at the first light. For most of human time, we moved with the seasons. Small bands followed herds, searched for roots and fruit, and learned the landscape like a story told by footprints. A river meant water and fish. A cliff meant shelter. A storm meant danger and direction. Knowledge wasn't written. It was remembered, repeated, and protected. And then came the quiet technologies. Sharpened stone, braided fiber, bone needles, and controlled fire. Fire stretched the day longer, cooked food softer, and gathered people closer. In that orange glow, language grew more precise. Plans became possible. Myths formed. The world outside remained vast and uncertain, but inside the circle, there was warmth and the first feeling of home. Around 12,000 years ago, something changed. Not everywhere at once, but in many places over time. People began to stay. They noticed which seeds returned after a season, which animals could be guided, which valleys held water reliably. Farming wasn't just an invention, it was a new relationship with time. When you plant, you're making a promise to the future. You're saying, "We will still be here when this grows." With fields came storage, and with storage came counting. A surplus meant more children could survive, more hands could build, and more minds could specialize. But it also meant something new, the worry of loss. Grain could be stolen, land could be taken. The first roots of civilization were both nourishment and tension. As villages grew, they gathered along rivers like necklaces of light. The Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, the Yellow River. Water made soil rich, but it also demanded coordination. Canals, dikes, calendars, shared rules. When many families depend on the same system, someone has to organize it. So towns became cities, and cities began to hum with new roles: builders, potters, priests, traders, guards. Temples and granaries rose as symbols of collective effort. And to keep track of it all, who owed what, who delivered grain, who owned land, marks became writing. At first, simple scratches and symbols, then sentences. Civilization learned to speak to itself across days, seasons, and generations. With writing came memory that didn't fade, and with memory came law. Rules stopped being only spoken by elders. They became carved, copied, and enforced. This made life more predictable, sometimes fairer, sometimes harsher, but always more structured. And structure made big projects possible: stones stacked into walls and ziggurats, roads leveled across uneven ground, boats and carts moving goods farther than one person could carry. In each city, the same question returned: how do we live together without tearing each other apart? The answers varied: custom, religion, punishment, shared festivals, but the need was universal. Civilization is, in many ways, an argument we keep trying to solve: how to share space, time, and power. Soon, the world connected. Trade routes stitched distant places together with threads of spice, salt, silk, copper, and stories. A merchant didn't just carry goods. They carried ideas, new tools, new words, new beliefs. On land, caravans crossed deserts by starlight. At sea, ships learned the moods of wind and current. Ports became crossroads where strangers had to trust one another long enough to bargain. That trust created money, contracts, and shared measures, small inventions with enormous consequences. But connection also spread conflict. When a road exists, armies can march along it too. Civilizations grew rich and curious, and also anxious, guarding borders and resources. Still, every exchange widened the human map. The world became less mysterious and more intertwined. Empires rose like storms, sudden, powerful, reshaping everything beneath them. Some expanded with roads and administration, others with sheer fear. They built grand capitals, standardized languages, collected taxes, and promised order. For many people, empire meant safety from local raids and a chance to trade farther than ever before. For others, it meant being conquered, renamed, and ruled by distant strangers. History rarely offers clean heroes. Yet even in the shadow of power, ordinary life continued. Families ate, worked, loved, argued, and dreamed. And in quiet corners, schools, libraries, workshops, thinkers asked deeper questions. What is justice? What is a good life? What do we owe each other? Those questions survived every throne and every collapse, passed forward like embers. Then came one of history's most reliable rhythms: rise, strain, and fall. Droughts, plagues, debt, corruption, invasion, sometimes one, sometimes many at once. Systems that seemed permanent began to crack. When a society weakens, people don't stop being human. They adapt. They move to safer regions, form new communities, protect what knowledge they can, and rebuild with whatever remains. After collapses, trade can shrink, cities can thin out, and politics can fragment. But it's also when new cultures blend, new languages form, and new ideas take root. Civilization isn't a straight staircase upward. It's more like a long walk through night and dawn, periods of bright torchlight, then shadows, then light again. And each time, humans keep going. In time, knowledge traveled faster than armies. Paper, printing, and widespread literacy changed the scale of learning. A discovery no longer had to die with its discoverer. Ideas could replicate. Maps improved, instruments sharpened, and curiosity turned into a method. Observe, test, revise. Science and engineering began to transform daily life. Cleaner water in some places, better crops in others, machines that multiplied human strength. But progress came with choices. New tools could heal or harm. New wealth could lift communities or deepen inequality. Every era feels modern to the people living in it, and every era has blind spots. Still, there's something tender about this part of the story. Strangers sharing knowledge across distance, building on one another's work, trusting that truth is worth chasing. It's like lighting candles from candle to candle. The Industrial Revolution arrived like a new heartbeat, fast, insistent, mechanical. Coal and steam turned factories into roaring creatures, and cities swelled with people looking for work. Railways pulled continents tighter. Clocks began to rule time in minutes instead of seasons. This era produced extraordinary change: cheaper goods, mass production, new medicines, and the promise that tomorrow could be engineered. But it also brought smoke-choked air, dangerous labor, and a feeling that life was speeding up beyond human comfort. When civilization accelerates, it asks us to adapt emotionally, not just practically. Communities had to reinvent themselves, families reorganized, governments confronted new demands. In the noise of machines, people still searched for meaning, music, faith, friendship, and small moments of quiet that felt like returning to the firelight again. And then, almost suddenly, in the scale of history, the world became connected by invisible threads. Electricity pushed back the dark. Radio carried voices through walls. Satellites turned the planet into a mapped, measured sphere. Computers shrank from rooms to pockets. Today, many of us carry a doorway to nearly all recorded knowledge. It's astonishing. It's also overwhelming. Our ancient brains, built for small circles of trust, now face constant signals, constant comparison, constant news. So the old questions return in modern clothing. What do we pay attention to? Who do we believe? How do we stay human in a system this large? Maybe the answer is not to reject the future, but to remember the oldest skills civilization ever had: gathering, listening, and choosing what kind of story we want to live inside. So as you settle into sleep, hold the whole arc gently. We began with wandering under stars, then learned to plant and stay, to build cities and write our memories down. We traded, argued, cooperated, conquered, and rebuilt. We made engines, mapped the world, and finally built networks of light. And through every chapter, one thing stayed surprisingly consistent. Humans kept trying to turn uncertainty into shelter. Sometimes we did it with fire, sometimes with laws, sometimes with inventions, sometimes with stories told softly to someone we care about. You are part of this civilization, not just as a viewer of history, but as a living page in it. Tomorrow will be shaped by ordinary choices repeated. For now, let the long timeline fade into a peaceful dark, like embers settling after a good tale. Good night.